The setting sun colored the sky in orange tones, reflecting on the calm waters of the river that ran through the small city of Santa Clara. It was a landscape that Vicente Andrade hadn't seen in over years, but which he still kept in his memory like a forgotten treasure at the bottom of a dusty drawer. He parked the shiny black car on the gravel driveway of the Mendon estate where so many memories of his youth had been written. The rusty gate creaked as it opened, echoing throughout the deserted street. As if announcing its arrival, Vicente took a deep breath before getting out of the vehicle. The gentle breeze carried the familiar scent of the wild flowers that grew along the path to the main house. He adjusted the cuffs of his impeccably pressed white shirt, trying to dispel the tension building in his chest. It wasn't just nostalgia that had brought him back, it was something much bigger, an unsettling need to end old cycles and face ghosts. He never had the courage to confront. The house seemed smaller than he remembered, although the grandeur of its colonial details was still impressive. The whitewashed walls showed subtle cracks, testament to the time that had passed in the garden. Some rose bushes were still blooming showily, despite the obvious lack of care. Everything there bore signs of abandonment, except for the yellowish light that escaped through the cracks in the room's windows. Someone was home. Vicente's feelings were on the surface. What do you think he will do now? Before we continue, I'm going to tell you the importance of subscribing to the channel. When you subscribe, you're telling YouTube that you want more videos like the one you're watching, and you don't need to look any longer. It's suggested to you now. Let's continue, because there's still many twists and turns to move our hearts. He hesitated for a moment, holding tightly to the leather briefcase that contained important documents inside. In addition to papers related to the sale of the property, there were also unanswered questions that he needed to ask directly. To Isabella Mondona, the woman who had been his first love and whose absence had profoundly marked his adult life. When he finally knocked on the door, he heard slow footsteps coming from inside the creaking wood. Flooring stopped abruptly, and then the doorknob turned. When the door opened, Vicente felt the air run out of his lungs. Isabella was standing in front of him, so different, and at the same time so the same. Her brown hair, once long and loose, was now tied up in an elegant bun. His green eyes, which used to shine with youthful innocence, now had a deep, almost indecipherable tone. She wore a simple dress, but it shaped her curves with natural grace. There were subtle wrinkles around his eyes, lines of vivid laughter and tears, but what caught Vicente's attention most was the way she looked at him, cold, calculating, as if she already knew he was coming and was prepared for anything. My heart raced. Here in yours. The story is getting good. Let's continue. Have you signed up yet, Vicente? She said, her voice calm but full of subtext. There was no surprise in his expression, just a kind of tired resignation. Isabella, he replied, forcing a polite smile as he tried to hide the whirlwind of emotions inside him. It's been a long time. She crossed her arms over her chest, creating an invisible barrier between them. Yes, it does. What do you want? The words were direct, almost cutting, but Vicente noticed something else behind them. Pain, a veiled pain buried beneath years of wounded pride and difficult decisions. He swallowed hard, knowing this meeting would be anything but easy. I came to talk about the property. He began, choosing his words carefully. I heard you intend to sell it. I wanted to propose an offer. Isabella raised an eyebrow, clearly suspicious. And why does this interest you? You already have enough money to buy half of this city, don't you? The comment was a sharp knife, and Vicente knew that this conversation wouldn't just be about business. He squared his shoulders, determined to maintain his composure. Honey doesn't buy everything. Isabella, I just wanted to help. This house has always meant a lot to me. For us. She looked away for a brief moment, as if his words had touched something deep inside her. But when she looked at him again, her expression was closed again. The past is behind us, Vicente. There are no more us. If you want to negotiate, we can talk about it, but don't come here thinking you can revive what has already died. The weight of her words hit Vicente like a punch in the stomach. He knew he deserved that rejection, but that didn't make the pain any less intense. Even so, he nodded, maintaining his posture. Understood. Can I come in? Isabella hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The interior of the house was impeccable. Although simply decorated, old photographs adorned the walls, capturing happy moments from a time that seemed to belong to another life. Vicente recognized some of them. He and Isabella at the high school graduation, smiling as if the whole world were within reach. The two of them sitting by the river, laughing as they shared an impromptu picnic coffee. She asked, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Please, he replied, feeling grateful for the distraction. As she moved around the kitchen, Vicente observed every gesture, every detail. Isabella looked different in every possible way. But there was still something about her that attracted him irresistibly. Maybe it was the silent strength that emanated from her presence. Or maybe it was simply an echo of who she once was when she returned with two steaming cups. She placed them on the table and sat down opposite her, keeping a safe distance. So Valiente, let's get straight to the point. What is your offer? He opened the briefcase and took out some documents, placing them on the table while explaining the terms of the transaction. He noticed that Isabella barely looked at the papers. Her focus was on him, assessing him with an intensity that made him nervous. Sounds fair, she said, after a few minutes, although her voice remained distant. But I have one condition, which he asked cautiously. I want you to tell me why you really came back. It's not just about the house. Is it? Valiente hesitated, surprised by her insight. I knew I couldn't lie. Isabella had always been able to see through him. You're right, he admitted, lowering his eyes for a moment. I needed to go back. I needed to understand some things about us, about what happened. Isabella aside, getting up from the chair. Well, maybe it's time to find out, then. But know that some truths may not be easy to hear. With these words, she left the room, leaving Vicente alone with his thoughts, and the weight of a past that he was not yet ready to face. And now what will she do? Comment. What you think? The sound of Isabella's footsteps echoed through the hallway. As she walked away, leaving Valiente immersed in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He looked around the room, trying to take in every detail that could help him better understand the woman she had become. The photographs on the walls seemed to mock him, as if whispering memories of a time when everything was simpler before hasty decisions, and unspoken words had created an unbridgeable rift between them. Vente knew that this meeting would not be easy, but Isabella's calculated coldness had brought him off guard. She was no longer the dreamy girl. He had known the one who firmly believed in the power of love to overcome any obstacle. The woman in front of him was resilient, marked by emotional scars that he still didn't fully understand. And although part of him desperately wanted to achieve that previous version of her, another part recognized that it was impossible. Time had changed them both, and the choices they made had distanced them in ways no apology could repair. When Isabella returned, she brought with her a small dark wooden box, the surface of which showed signs of wear. She placed it on the table carefully, as if she were handling something fragile. His fingers traced the edges before opening the lid, revealing a collection of seemingly random objects: a worn leather bracelet, a folded note, an old photograph, and a necklace with a broken heart-shaped pendant. Do you remember that? She asked, holding the necklace and holding it up to the light. Valiente frowned, examining the object. It was familiar, but he couldn't place it right away. Then something inside him clicked. It was the necklace he had given to Isabella on the day they promised to be together forever. At the time, he had sworn that the gift symbolized his unwavering commitment. Now faced with the broken piece, he felt a wave of guilt invade him. I remember, he murmured, avoiding her penetrating gaze. But why is it broken? Isabella let it out, a bitter, almost inaudible laugh. Because promises are broken, Vicente, and when they break, they leave marks that never completely disappear. Her words hit him like a sharp blow. He wanted to argue, explained that his intentions were never to hurt her. But he knew that any justification would ring hollow. Instead, he chose to change the subject, trying to ease the growing tension. And the other items? He asked, indicating the box. She hesitated for a moment, then took out the folded note and handed it to him. Vente carefully unfolded the paper, recognizing his own youthful handwriting. It was a letter he had written to Isabella shortly before leaving abroad, full of grandiose plans and vague promises of return. Promises he never kept. I kept this because I thought that one day you would return to fulfill what you said here. She said, her voice soft but full of irony. But as you can see, I've learned not to trust people's words that much. Valiente lowered his head, unable to look at her. He felt exposed, as if every mistake he had made in the past was being mercilessly thrown in his face. I knew I deserved that silent rep man. But that didn't make the weight of guilt any less unbearable. Isabella, I know I made a mistake. He began finally, gathering the courage to face her. But I came here because I want to make things right. I want to understand what happened between us. Please give me this chance. She watched him for a long moment, her green eyes reflecting a complex mix of pain, anger, and something else Vente couldn't identify. Maybe it was hope buried beneath layers of distrust and hurt. It's not that simple, Valiente. She replied, her voice firm, but with an almost imperceptible tremor. What happened between us wasn't just a misunderstanding or an impulsive decision. They were choices you made, and choices I made too. He leaned forward, approaching her at the table. So tell me, explain to me what happened. I need to know. Isabella sighed deeply, as if she was pondering whether she should really open that door. Finally she said, not here, not now. If you really want to understand, you'll have to earn my trust again. And that will require more than a few nice words. Vicente nodded, determined. All good. I will do whatever is necessary. She stood up abruptly and interrupting the moment. Excellent, start by cleaning the barn. It's a mess out there, and I need help organizing some things before I decide what to do with the property. He blinked, surprised by the sudden change of subject. Clean the barn? Yes, she confirmed, crossing her arms again. If you really want to prove that you've changed, start by showing that you're willing to get your hands dirty tomorrow. In the morning, don't be late, without giving space for a reply. Isabella left the room, leaving Vente alone. Once again he looked at the box on the table, feeling the weight of each object inside. He knew that this was just the beginning of a difficult journey. But he also realized that Isabella was giving him an opportunity, even if minimal, to regain her trust. As he walked back to the car, Valiente couldn't help but notice how the night sky was filled with stars lighting the way back to the city. It felt like an omen, as if the universe was telling him that despite all the barriers, there was still a chance to find light in the midst of the darkness. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. Isabella was no longer the girl he could win over with flowers and romantic promises. She was a strong, independent, and deeply wounded woman. And to achieve it, Valiente would need to prove that he was worthy of her trust. Something he was willing to do, no matter what the cost. Dawn in Santa Clara was always a silent spectacle, with the sun slowly emerging from behind the distant mountains, bathing the city in a golden light that seemed to caress every leaf and roof. Valiente arrived at the barn exactly as Isabella had demanded. He was dressed in simple clothes-worn jeans and a gray t-shirt, prepared to get his hands dirty and face whatever task she set for him. The barn was exactly as she said. A mess, rusty tools scattered across the floor, crates stacked precariously, and cobwebs covering every visible corner. It was clear that no one had been in there for years. The smell of old wood and dust hung in the air, mixing with a light morning breeze that came through the cracks in the walls. Isabella appeared a few minutes later, carrying a tray with 2 cups of steaming coffee. She wore worn-out jeans and a white cotton blouse, her hair tied into a casual ponytail. There was something different about her that morning, something more approachable, although she still maintained a certain reserve. Coffee? She asked, extending one of the cups to him. Vicente accepted with a brief smile, grateful for the unexpected kindness. Thanks, I didn't expect room service. She rolled her eyes, but there was a hint of humor in her expression. Don't get used to it. There's still a lot of work ahead. While they drank coffee, Isabel explained the plan for the day, organizing the tools, cleaning the space, and separating the items that could be donated or sold. It seemed like a simple task, but Vicente knew it was just a test. She wanted to see how far he was willing to go to prove his intentions. The first few minutes were silent, except for the sound of tools being dragged and the occasional rustle of birds outside. Vente worked with dedication, trying not to show the discomfort caused by the dust and muscles. Unaccustomed to physical effort, he noticed Isabella doing the same, moving efficiently, but without rushing. There was a natural grace in her gestures, something he had always admired about her. It was during a water break that the moment happened. Valiente was leaning over a bucket, trying to remove a thick layer of mud from an old hoe, when Isabella came over to help him. Her fingers brushed lightly against his, as she held the tool, and they both froze for a moment. "Sorry," she muttered back in a way quickly. "No need to apologize," he replied, his voice soft, almost hesitant. I just wanted to ask you something." Isabella raised an eyebrow, suspicious. What? He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "You look so different, stronger, as if nothing could shake you. But I wonder, is there still some place inside you that holds that girl?" I met the question caught her off guard. She looked away, clearly uncomfortable, but also intrigued for a moment. Vicente thought she was going to ignore the question. But then she spoke, her voice low and full of emotion. "That girl still exists, Valiente, but she learned to protect herself. You learn that trusting too much can hurt, and that some scars never completely disappear." Her words echoed inside him, awakening a deep sense of guilt. He wanted to say something, anything to ease the pain he heard in his voice. But he knew empty words would do no good. Instead, he continued working in silence, allowing the steady rhythm of the tasks to fill the space between them. Later, as they were organizing a pile of old books found in one of the crates, Valiente noticed a particularly worn volume. When he opened it, he saw that it was a notebook with pages full of handwritten drawings and poems. He immediately recognized Isabella's handwriting. "Do you still write?" he asked, holding the notebook carefully. She looked at the object and smiled almost imperceptibly. "Not as much as before, but these notebooks were my escape valve. When everything seemed lost, I put my emotions here." Valiente leafed through some pages, impressed by the depth of the words and the delicacy of the drawings. "They're incredible, Isabella. You have talent," she shrugged, trying to downplay the compliment. But he noticed the subtle gleam of pride in her eyes. "Maybe one day I'll write again. But now, well, now, I have other priorities," he asked, curious. "Yes," she replied, going back to organizing the books. "This house, for example. I need to decide what to do with her. And there are other things, people that depend on me." Valiente felt a pang of jealousy when he heard that, even though he knew he had no right to feel anything other than respect for his responsibilities. He nodded, trying to hide the complexity of his feelings. "I understand, and I'm here to help in any way I can." Isabella looked at him for a long moment, as if assessing the sincerity of his words. Then, to Vicente's surprise, she smiled, a genuine smile, which lit up her face in an almost magical way. "You know, maybe you really are changing," she said, her voice soft. "We'll see." Those words remained engraved in Vicente's mind for the rest of the day. He knew there was still a long way to go, but that small glimpse of vulnerability on Isabella's part was enough to fuel his hope. For the first time since returning to Santa Clara, he felt that perhaps there was a real chance of rebuilding something between them. As the sun began to set, lighting the barn with golden and orange tones, Vicente and Isabella finished the work together. They were exhausted, but there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. While they were putting away the last tools, Isabella broke the silence. "Thank you for your help today," she said without looking at him directly. "It wasn't as bad as I expected." Vicente smiled, feeling a pang of pride. "Whenever you need me, I'm here," she nodded, but didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. "Maybe I need you more often than I imagine." Although the words were vague, Valiente knew that this was progress, a small step towards something bigger. The following days followed an almost ritualistic rhythm. Vente showed up early at Isabella's house, every morning ready to help with any task she assigned him. As they worked side by side, a silence began to settle between them. It wasn't just rusty tools or old furniture that were being restored. It was something deeper, something either of them were willing to name openly. One afternoon, while organizing the attic, a dusty space full of forgotten memories, Valiente found a box full of photo albums. He sat on the floor leafing through the yellowed pages, carefully while Isabella watched from afar. Hesitantly, "Did you keep all of this?" he asked, surprised to see images from his own childhood mixed with hers. There were photos of birthday parties, riverside picnics, and even some candid captures of the two, laughing together, oblivious to the camera. "Of course I kept it," she replied, approaching slowly. "They are memories. Even when well, even after you left, these photos reminded me of who I was before, of who we were." Valiente looked up at her, noticing the vulnerability in her voice. It was as if each word carried the weight of years of longing and regret. He closed the album gently and set it aside, standing up to face her. "Isabella, I know I can't change the past. But I want to understand why you never tried to look for me. Why did you let it all end like this?" She looked away, clearly uncomfortable with the question. For a long moment, the only sound in the attic was the creaking of the boards beneath his feet. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost a whisper. "I tried, Valiente. I wrote letters, called the number you gave me, but never got an answer. After a while, I stopped trying. I thought you had moved on, that life here didn't mean anything to you anymore." He shook his head in disbelief. "I never received any letter. No phone calls. If I had known what—" She interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "If you had known, would you have come back? Would you have given up everything to stay here?" "I don't think so. You had already decided what you wanted. Vicente and I just stayed behind." Her words hit him like a punch in the gut. He wanted to argue, to explain that things weren't as simple as they seemed. But he knew that any justification would ring hollow. Instead, he chose to be honest. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I was selfish. But that doesn't mean I didn't miss you every day, that I wouldn't think of you every time I saw something that reminded me of us." Isabella stared at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She seemed torn between anger and sadness, as if she was fighting herself not to give in to her emotions. Finally, she sighed, letting her guard down. "I missed you too," she admitted, her voice bar audible. "But time heals, Valiente. Or at least teaches you how to live with pain." He took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "And now, does it still hurt?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Sometimes, especially when I see you here trying to fix something that I thought was lost forever." Vicente reached out his hand lightly, touching his arm. "Then let me try. Let me show you that there's still something here. Something worth saving for a moment." Isabella allowed herself to feel the heat of his touch, the closeness of his body. It was as if an invisible barrier had been broken, allowing both of them to glimpse the possibility of a new beginning. But then she backed away, crossing her arms over her chest, as if she needed to protect herself again. "It's not that easy, Valiente. There are things you still don't know, things that can change everything." He frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" She shook her head, avoiding answering directly. "It doesn't matter now. Just don't push too hard. I'm trying to trust you again. But it takes time." Valiente nodded, respecting his request. He knew he was treading on delicate ground, that pushing too hard could push her away again. He decided to change the subject, trying to ease the tension. "What if I took you to dinner today?" he suggested, trying to sound casual. "It doesn't have to be anything formal. Just something different." Isabella smiled, slightly surprised by the invitation to have lunch. "Yes, as friends," he added quickly, realizing that perhaps he had gone too far, "just to get out of this house for a few hours." She pondered for a moment, then nodded, "All good. But I choose the place." The smile that lit up Vent's face was genuine, almost childish. Deal. Later that night, they went to a small restaurant by the river, a place Isabella occasionally frequented to enjoy the tranquility. The atmosphere was simple, but cozy, with wooden tables and flickering candles that created an intimate atmosphere as they shared a light meal, and talked about trivial matters. Valiente noticed that Isabella seemed more relaxed than she had in recent days. Remember that time we came here when we were teenagers? He asked, pointing to the place where they used to sit. You spilled all the orange juice on my new shirt. Isabella laughed, genuinely amused. And you were furious. But I bought you another juice. So I thought it was okay. See, he always knew how to win me over. He joked, winking at her. The atmosphere between them was light, almost like old times. But at the same time there was an undercurrent of repressed desire, something neither of them were ready to fully face. When dinner ended, and they walked back to the car, the tension returned, hanging in the air. Like an unspoken promise. Thank you for the night, said Isabella, stopping next to the vehicle. It was good for me too, replied Vente, hesitating for a moment before continuing. Listen, Isabella. I know there is still a lot to resolve. But I want you to know that I'm willing to wait as long as necessary. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. Waiting doesn't guarantee anything, Valiente. But thanks for trying with that. She got into the car, leaving him standing there, deep in thought. Valiente knew that this was just the beginning of a long and complicated journey. But for the first time he felt there was a real chance of winning Isabella's heart back, even if it required giving up parts of himself. He wasn't yet ready to confront the days following the dinner, were marked by an almost palpable sense of progress between Valiente and Isabella. They continued to work together in the house, but now there was a new dynamic to their interaction. Something softer, less defensive. Conversations flowed more easily, and moments of silence were no longer filled with tension, but rather with a mutual understanding that slowly grew, however, like a storm that gathers on the horizon. Without warning, an unexpected obstacle came to shake this fragile connection. It was a sunny morning when Valiente arrived at Isabella's house, bringing with him a bag of fresh bread and coffee. He was excited, eager to continue helping her, and who knows, maybe even share another light moment, like dinner. But when he entered the room, he immediately noticed that something was different. Isabella was sitting on the sofa, holding a letter in her hands. Her face was pale, and her green eyes were fixed on the paper, as if she were trying to decipher something impossible. When Valiente called her name, she raised her head, but her expression was distant, almost scared. What it was? He asked, approaching quickly. Did something happen? She hesitated before responding, as if debating whether or not to share what was happening. Finally, he handed her the letter with a heavy S. It's my sister's, Clara. She's heading back to Santa Clara. Valiente frowned, confused. And is that bad? I thought you guys were close. We are, Isabella replied, her voice choked. But there are things about the past that Clara doesn't know, things I never told her. And now with her coming back, everything could come to a head. He read the letter quickly, noticing Isabella's sister's warm and excited tone. Clara mentioned that she was returning to the city after years of living abroad, eager to reunite with her family and return to her roots. However, Valiente could feel the underlying concern in Isabella's words. Why are you so worried? He asked gently. If you're close, I'm sure she'll understand anything that needs to be explained. Handed him the old letter she had found in the library. Isabella shook her head, frustrated. You don't understand, Valiente. There are secrets here. Secrets that involve you too. And I don't know if I'm ready to face them again. The mention of secrets that involved him left Vente even more confused. He wanted to pressure her, demand answers, but he knew that forcing the situation would only push her further away. Instead, he chose to offer support. If you need help, I'm here. It doesn't matter what it is. She stared at him for a long moment, as if assessing the sincerity of his words. Then finally he nodded. Thanks, but for now, I need space. I need to think about what to do. Those words were like a blow to Vente. He felt the weight of temporary separation hanging in the air. Even though she hadn't explicitly said she wanted distance, he knew that insisting would be a mistake. So he just nodded, respecting his decision. All good. I'll be around if